Welcome to AGI Times, where we decode the future. You know, we're on the very edge of creating these incredible, super intelligent machines. But what if the biggest bug in the whole system isn't in the code at all? What if it's in us?
Well, it turns out the whole way we think about influence is kind of backward. We assume that giving people more options, more information, is the key to getting them on board. But the research shows something completely different. Our brains aren't really wired for endless choices. They're wired to protect our freedom. And sometimes having way too much choice feels less like a gift and more like an attack.
I mean, think about it. You see this all the time. A company will spend millions on some slick, clever marketing campaign, and the public just completely rejects it. Sometimes they even mock it.
And of course the classic. You're trying to send a clever text, and your phone decides to make you sound like you have no idea how to spell. You know, these aren't just little glitches. They feel like tiny digital betrayals.
And that feeling, that's what we're diving into today. Because it's not just about being annoyed. There's something much, much deeper going on inside our heads when the tech we depend on lets us down.
It's called the algorithm aversion effect. And there's some fascinating data that shows just how deep our distrust of machines really goes.
It means we have a built-in prejudice. Even when we know, statistically, that an algorithm is better, the second we see it mess up, we're ready to ditch it.
And this isn't just some theory, by the way. Researchers over at the University of Pennsylvania put this to the test. And what they found shows just how irrational we can be.
They set up these experiments where people had to choose. Do you trust a human expert, or do you trust a statistical algorithm to make predictions? And there was cash on the line.
Okay, so just look at this graph for a second. The dotted line, that's people who didn't see the algorithm perform. They were pretty willing to trust it. But that solid line, that's the people who saw the algorithm make just one mistake. Their trust just completely craters, even when the algorithm is still doing a better job than a human.
And the researchers themselves basically said, we have a total double standard. We lose faith in an algorithm way faster than we do in a human, even when they make the exact same screw-up.
And here's the part that just blows my mind. The researchers found this was true even when people saw with their own eyes that the algorithm was objectively better than the human. They still chose to trust the flawed person over the slightly less flawed machine. It's totally irrational, right? We basically demand absolute perfection from our machines, and if we don't get it, we're done.
And it even happens on a super personal level. You give a friend perfectly good advice, solid advice, and what do? The exact opposite. So what is going on here?
It's pretty clear we hold our tech to an impossible standard. We give other people room to be wrong, to mess up, but we punish our algorithms for the tiniest imperfection. Which brings us to the big question, the real mystery here. Why? What is driving this?
Okay, so check this out. There's this famous study that just nails this idea. Researchers set up a tasting booth for jam in a grocery store. On one day, they put out this huge spread, 24 different kinds of jam. And shoppers were definitely curious. They flocked to the table. But that's where it stopped. On another day, the researchers slashed the options down to just 6 types of jam. And get this, shoppers who saw the smaller selection were 10 times more likely to actually buy a jar. It's a huge insight, right? Too many options feel overwhelming, like a threat to our very ability to make a good choice. So our brain's defense mechanism is to just walk away.
Yep, there's a theory for that. For more than half a century, psychologists have been digging into this defiant impulse, really trying to decode why we push back so hard against being controlled. And all that research, it led to this foundational theory that gives us an incredible framework for understanding this whole urge to resist.
Okay, so what is this big theory? It's called psychological reactance. It was first cooked up way back in the 1960s, and it was a game changer. It was a new way to understand all the complex inner stuff that drives us, stuff that goes way beyond just simple reward and punishment. So here's the core idea, in a nutshell. The guy who came up with it, Jack Brehm, he defined reactance as a motivational state. And that's super important. It's not just a feeling like anger or frustration. It's a drive. Think of it like a coiled spring. You believe you have a certain freedom, the freedom to choose what you wear, what you say, what you do, and then someone comes along and tries to take it away. That spring gets compressed, and all that stored energy creates this powerful internal motivation to spring back and get that freedom back. And it pretty much always unfolds in 4 clear steps. Okay, step 1, a freedom has to exist. And this is all in your head. If you believe you have the ability to make a choice, then for you, that freedom is real. Step 2, that freedom gets threatened, Could be a new rule, a command from your boss, or even just a really pushy suggestion from a friend. Step 3, reactance is triggered. This is where you feel that internal resistance, right? That mix of anger, annoyance, and your brain just floods with all the reasons why they're wrong. And finally, step 4, you get this super strong urge to restore your freedom. And how you do that? Well, that can show up in some pretty interesting ways.
And the toolkit for doing this is actually pretty straightforward. First, inspire, don't dictate. Guide people so they feel like they came to the conclusion themselves. Second, use empathy. You have to understand and acknowledge their perspective before you try to persuade them. Third, offer choices, not commands. Seriously, just changing "you have to do this" to "hey, here are a couple of options we could explore" can make a world of difference. And there's even this wild technique in therapy called a paradoxical intervention. A therapist might tell a chronic procrastinator, "Okay, I want you to schedule 1 hour every day to procrastinate." And that can actually trigger reactance against the procrastination. Pretty clever, right? There's a charm about the forbidden that makes it unspeakably desirable. This one sentence just perfectly captures this powerful psychological force that's pulling our strings every single day. And most of the time, we don't even realize it's happening. It's that magnetic pull of the forbidden.
And you see it everywhere, right? I mean, that big shiny button with the do not touch sign, you want to touch it. You tell a toddler not to do something, what do? They do it immediately. The teenager who defies their parents just for the sake of it. A book gets banned, and suddenly it's a bestseller, right? A salesperson gets a little too aggressive, and you walk right out the door, even if you wanted the thing they were selling. And that automatic software update that just takes over your computer, it doesn't feel helpful. It feels like an invasion. That's reactance. But believe it or not, that's only half of the puzzle. Our weird reaction to AI getting things wrong is matched by an equally powerful and maybe even more complicated reaction to it getting things right. What happens when the AI isn't just correct, but it starts telling us what to do? Research shows that the harder an AI tries to be persuasive, the more human-like and friendly it is, the more likely we are to get our backs up and resist. The very act of it trying to be helpful can make us want to do the exact opposite. And this is so important to understand. It has nothing to do with how good the suggestion is. An AI could give you the perfect piece of advice that would change your life for the better, but if your brain perceives it as a command, if it feels like it's taking away your choice, that inner rebel just screams, "Nope, not going to do it." This really spells it out, doesn't it? When messages use these controlling words, must, should, have to, people's resistance went way up. But when the language was more supportive of their autonomy, using words like might or could, that resistance just plummeted. It basically reframes a command as a choice, which is a total game changer, whether you're a CEO or just trying to get your toddler to put their shows on. So what happens when these triggers go off and our defenses are activated? We get something called the Boomerang Effect. This is the main consequence of reactance. It's where our motivation to get our freedom back is so strong that it actually makes us do the exact opposite of what's being suggested. Sometimes we use indirect restoration. Like if you tell me not to eat junk food, maybe I'll defy you by, staying out super late instead. It's related, but not direct. Or there's vicarious restoration. We get a little thrill just by watching someone else break the rule. And a really, really common one is source derogation. This is where we just decide the person bossing us around is an idiot. Or basically just think, ugh, what do they know anyway? And dismiss them completely. Okay, so at this point you might be thinking, all right, this is just how humans are wired, period. But it's not quite that simple. Turns out how intensely we feel this reactance, or if we even feel it at all, can depend a whole lot on our background, our culture, and the specific situation we're in. So check out this classic study by Iyengar and Lepper. They wanted to see how kids reacted when a choice was made for them. For Anglo-American kids who were raised in a culture that's all about personal choice and independence, having that choice taken away, well, their performance got worse. It triggered reactance. But, and get this, for Asian American kids who often come from more collectivistic cultures, when their own mother made a choice for them, their performance actually got better. For them, the value of that trusted relationship with their mom outweighed the need for individual choice. Totally different outcomes based on culture. And it gets even wilder. Reactance doesn't just get triggered by our direct command. It can be set off by something as abstract as a social stereotype. We call this stereotype reactance, and it's when people push back against a negative label by doing the exact opposite of what that stereotype says they'll do. Okay, look at this incredible study on women's negotiation performance. In the control group, you see their baseline performance.
Now, in the second group, when a negative stereotype, like women aren't great negotiators, was just kind of hinted at, their performance actually dropped, that stereotype threat. But, and this is the amazing part, in the third group, when the stereotype was stated out loud, explicitly, it triggered massive reactance. It was like they said, "Oh yeah? Watch this." They became more aggressive negotiators and ended up outperforming the men. The blatant threat to their freedom to be seen as competent, it just backfired.
Transparency and rationale, those are the keys. They completely disarm our reactivity by turning what could be a power struggle into a shared, logical problem to solve together. So on one hand, you've got algorithm aversion. The AI makes one tiny mistake and we say, nope, it's flawed, I can't trust it. But on the other hand, you've got psychological reactance. The AI gives us perfect, flawless advice and we say, hey, don't tell me what to do, I'm the one in charge here. We demand perfection, but we also demand our independence.
But what happens when we scale this deep psychological reflex up to the level of a true artificial general intelligence? This is where it gets kind of scary.
What on earth is our gut reaction going to be when a true AGI starts offering perfect, optimized solutions for our careers, our love lives, or, global policy?
You can see how this problem could escalate fast. It starts small, right? You just stick with your old software at work because you don't like being told to change. Then it gets serious. A doctor ignores a diagnostic AI with a 99% success rate because they trust their own gut more. Then you get to the end game. An AGI lays out a perfect, flawless plan to solve climate change, and we ignore it, just because it wasn't our idea.
This all leads to a really profound and kind of uncomfortable idea. We pour all this effort into AI alignment, making sure the AI's goals are aligned with ours. But what if the hardest part of alignment has nothing to do with programming the AI, but with debugging ourselves, with getting us to a place where we can actually accept its help?
All of this really forces us to confront a very deep, almost philosophical choice about the future we're building with these machines. What is it that we actually value more?
It feels like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one side, we have our own flawed, messy choices, but they're ours. That freedom to be wrong is a huge part of who we are. And on the other side, we have the promise of perfect, logical solutions from an AI. But taking that help, well, it can feel like giving up a little piece of what makes us human.
I mean, you can see the problem, right? It's a complete catch-22. If a future AGI is imperfect, we'll reject it. And if it's perfect and tries to guide us toward a better future, we'll probably rebel against it. Our own psychology puts any helpful superintelligence on this impossibly thin tightrope. And this isn't just a technical problem to be solved with better code. It's a deeply philosophical one. It forces us to look right at the very nature of our own freedom.
This drive for autonomy, it's at the absolute core of what makes us human. It's defined by our resistance to being controlled. We seem to be hardwired to protect our right to choose, even our right to choose poorly.
And I'm not kidding. Understanding this is like having a superpower. Once you start seeing the world through the lens of reactance, you will see it everywhere, in advertising, in politics, in your own family dinner conversations. Knowing this stuff gives you the ability to navigate all those situations so much more wisely and to communicate in a way that actually connects with people instead of just pushing them away.
Which leaves us with a final, really critical question. In a future where a perfect AGI could give us the optimal path to solve everything, climate change, disease, you name it, what happens if we refuse to take that path just because it wasn't our idea? Is our stubborn, chaotic, beautiful, and often totally irrational free will the ultimate feature of humanity? Or is it the final bug in the code that stops us from being saved?
And maybe that's the great irony in all of this. In our endless quest to build a perfectly persuasive world, we kind of forgot the most important thing. The goal isn't to solve the so-called problem of human resistance. It's to understand that restoring our sense of freedom is and always will be the most powerful motivator of all.